Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sessions Cafe, brought to you by Intrigue Magazine. I'm your host, Keri Singleton, and today we welcome a very important person in my life, my primary care doctor and friend, Dr. Cary English, to the show. Welcome to the show, brother.
My pleasure, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here, man. We have so much to talk about. I mean, it's interesting. I've been begging you to come on the show for a minute because I really felt like you had such a great story to tell. And today, you're not sticking thermometers in my mouth or checking my blood pressure or nothing like that. Hoping that I guess I'm doing all right, right? Today, I get to stick the microphone at you and talk about your story, because you definitely have a great one. First thing I want to ask you, Dr. English, when did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in medicine? Because that's a lot of African-American people, quite frankly, when we're kids, we want to be singers, we want to be actors or actresses, we want to play basketball, we want to do music. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem to me that, at least in my generation, that enough of us wanted to be doctors, lawyers, you know, and those type of high-profiled career paths. At what point did you, if you remember, that you wanted to pursue a career in medicine? When was that spark?
It's interesting. Briefly, it's going to be truncated. Mm-hmm. But I started out taking care of myself when I was 16.
Oh, wow.
I was on my own.
Wow.
I dropped out of high school because I was taking care of myself, working and living on my own.
Okay.
And it came a time when my mother came to me one day, and at the time I was a high school dropout, no diploma. And she gave me an application for medical school. And also at the time, I was married with 2 children, my mother, and I was taking care of everybody.
Wow.
She brought me this application for NYU Medical School. And at the time, it was like, I said, how could you do this? I don't even have a diploma. I have nothing, no money, nothing.
Right.
How could I ever go to medical school?
Right.
She turned, walked away, and just left me there.
With the application?
With the application. Police department, too. Eventually, I was able to go get my high school equivalency. And took the police department exam, passed it, got into college.
Wow.
When I was in college, I was trying to decide, what do I want to do? And all of a sudden, it came to me. I think I want to be a doctor. I want to do something that would be so impossible to ever accomplish based upon my background. So I'm going to go to medical school.
You want to beat the odds.
That's it. And it all came from when my mother gave me that application.
Wow.
And I thought it was hopeless.
Right. You probably was like, what is this all about?
That's what I said. I was upset.
Wow. Wow. That's a story in and of itself, man. I have to ask you, what was medicine like in the 1970s and in the 1980s? And when I say medicine, I mean the medical community, the medical environment. What was the community like in terms of internal medicine, particularly in the black community, I should say, or anywhere in the inner city, I guess?
It was different. The overall the environment in medicine was different. At that particular time, doctors made decisions based upon what they thought was right, best for the patient. It wasn't so much of orders coming from outside of what you felt was right from inside of yourself. It's changed now. Now you are, to a certain extent, commanded to do certain things.
Can you elaborate?
Well, I mean, I'll give you a good example concerning that COVID issue. They were sort of, to a certain extent, intimidating doctors, saying that you should tell every patient to get a COVID vaccine. If they don't want to get it, talk them into getting it.
Really?
Really. I didn't agree with that. Not that I have anything against vaccines.
Right.
It was mandating vaccines. It was telling people you have to do something. And that's not my philosophy concerning medicine. First of all, my philosophy is based upon, first, do no harm. Second of all, I'm just a guide for people.
Right.
I'm not there to tell them what to do. I offer them my educated opinion.
Correct.
And then I assist them in making their own decision. But I don't tell them, you got to do this, you got to do that.
Right.
So I didn't agree with that at all. And that's where medicine is going now.
Where would you say the mandate came from? I mean, the government, the higher-ups in the medical community, the hospitals?
We never knew.
Okay.
It was just part of a so-called better medical practice to offer these people the vaccine. If they don't want to take it, we were encouraged to encourage them to take it.
Right. Strongly encourage them. Yeah. And so in the 70s and the 80s, it was more geared towards what's the best for the patient.
Yes.
Interesting. Speaking of the 70s, you won the Freshman Chemistry Award in 1970. In 73, the Cardinal Newman Award for Outstanding Graduate. So you're a celebrated physician. What were those two awards like about?
That was from college.
Okay.
And it was based upon my desire and my ability and perseverance to work hard. For instance, during Christmas vacation, the professor would have classes at school for those who were interested in chemistry. I attended every last one of them.
Wow.
And I was very much strongly driven to succeed and do well. And so I went out of my way to spend every moment studying to improve my condition.
It's interesting. A young man that drops out of high school at 16, and you go to college, and you don't just language in college. You excel in college. Like, you made the most of that moment. Wow. Kudos to you on that, brother. Before we go to break, I want to delve into a very interesting topic that I want to run past you. In terms, and from a physician's perspective, the crack era of the 1990s. Talk about that.
And it was terrible, awful. As a matter of fact, I had a private office right on 125th Street.
In Harlem.
And I used to, be on 125th Street, and you would see, it was right off of Lenox Avenue. At that particular time, you didn't see a Caucasian in Harlem.
Right.
Ever. And it was just drug addicts all over the place.
Like zombies?
Zombies. But at that particular time, it was heroin, and then it went into crack. It was horrible. I also worked at Rikers Island for a year, and I saw all these people come in with all kinds of issues, drug issues.
Wow.
Everything. It was very bad, terrible. Harlem looked terrible.
Yeah. And how did you deal with patients from a medicinal perspective? How did you, if a patient came into the hospital or to your office and had a heroin or crack addiction, like, how did you, was it something, did you have to speak to them more so than give them drugs that could help them?
I did my internship at Harlem Hospital. I saw it all.
Wow.
Everything came through there. Matter of fact, we had patients that would come through with endocarditis. That's an infection of the heart valve from shooting drugs.
Wow.
And you get them better, they go out, they be back the next week, same thing.
Yeah.
And you could find them right by the emergency room. high. Just laying on the ground. And it was sort of, to a certain extent, it became sort of depressing, but you just had to keep on trying to encourage them to do better.
Right.
And not just toss them in the garbage can.
Right. Was it much like a revolving door?
Revolving. Sometimes we would see the same patient every week.
Wow.
With the same problem.
Wow. And in terms of issues that affected people that may have seemed hopeless, mental health, what was that like back in that era, 1990s? Did you have? I mean, was it? I mean, it might not have been as discussed as much, but certainly it was an issue. You had the houses where people were being held and kept. I mean, what was that like?
I remember the days when people were mandated to be admitted to psychiatric institutions, and all of a sudden they stopped it. They stopped mandating them, even though they were ill, mentally ill, on the street. They stopped putting them into the hospitals, and they just left them out there on the street.
Wow.
And it was horrible.
Wow.
Also, I remember I used to work, before I went to college, I worked in the Narcotic Addiction Control Commission, where instead of putting drug addicts in jail, they would put them in these institutions to be treated. And I did that for about a year. So it went from jail to going into treatment, and then they got rid of that.
Wow. Wow. I got some more questions to ask you about some other high-profile topics. Right after this break, we'll be back with Dr. Cary English on Sessions Cafe. We'll be right back. And we're back on Sessions Cafe with Dr. Cary English. Now, I know there's been a lot of social ills in society. Again, we went over the crack era. There's been just so many different periods of time when our nation just suffered through different medicinal issues. But I want to talk to you about the HIV/AIDS era, because you are an HIV/AIDS specialist. And man, what was that like being a physician in New York City at that during the HIV/AIDS, well, the climax of it? Because it's not like it's been eradicated. What was that like, brother?
Well, in 1979 to 1980, I was at Harlem Hospital doing my internship. And I can remember we saw a patient that came in, swollen lymph nodes, an infection, very sick, and no one knew what they had.
Right, wow.
And the patient ended up dying, and they were a drug addict. No one knew what they had. Later on, after some research studies, come to find out that person had HIV. And this was between 1979 and 1980.
Wow.
So I saw one of the first patients to be diagnosed with HIV.
Wow.
During 1979. Later on, during the 80s, it became more definitive. But there was no treatment. Then all of a sudden, they started giving people AZT. AZT was called an orphan drug. It had been used to treat something else, but the side effects were so horrendous, it was killing so many people, they took it off the market.
So was it a situation where the medicine was killing a patient before the disease did?
With AZT, it was used to treat something else.
Okay.
They took it off the market because it was so toxic. But there was a group of activists in the HIV community were screaming for some treatment. And so the drug company brought out AZT, and they started using AZT.
Yeah.
At the time, they were giving about 1,200 milligrams a day. It's too much. It was killing people.
And what exactly did that drug do to the body? Can you kind of walk us through how that works or worked?
It was supposed to stop the virus from replicating.
Okay.
But the AZT worked on rapidly replicating cells. Rapidly replicating cells were especially in the GI tract. And so it was killing all the cells that replicated rapidly in the body.
Wow.
The good cells. And so it was giving the patient such horrible side effects.
Oh man.
And at the dose they were using, they were being overdosed.
Overdosed.
And they were only using this one particular drug. Later on, it has evolved into, right now, there's an HIV cocktail, 3 drugs. It's poor medical practice to even use one drug. So they were using one drug that really wasn't doing anything except harming people. And it has moved into 3 drugs now, which people are doing a lot better with it.
How did the virus evolve? Or let me just rephrase that. How did the treatment for the virus evolve over the years? Because many people, I should say, are under the impression that HIV does not kill anymore.
Well,
people don't die from it anymore.
When I first started, just about everybody was dying. If they didn't die from HIV, they died from the AZT.
Okay.
Also, when it first started, it was considered to be a disease amongst the homosexual community.
Right.
It then moved into the drug addicted community through being transmitted via people using dirty needles.
So huge stigmas around around the virus.
It was terrible. Now, with the 3-drug regimen, and it also has evolved into 2 drugs. When I first started out, it got to the point where people could be taking 18 pills a day.
Wow.
They couldn't keep up with that.
Wow.
And with terrible side effects.
Right, I can imagine.
Now, evolved into taking 1 pill a day. 1 pill containing 3 different medications.
Within it?
Within it.
Okay. Would you say that that the era of people dying from AIDS is over?
Oh, well.
No.
First of all, people don't die from HIV. They die from a depressed immune system associated with HIV.
Explain that.
So they die not from HIV itself. They die from an immune system. The HIV attacks the immune system, depresses it, so that then the person is at greater risk for developing opportunistic infections, or certain forms of cancer.
Okay.
That's what they die from.
Right.
Not from HIV.
It makes them a lot more vulnerable.
Vulnerable to all different kinds of comorbidities.
Wow. So a lot of people that are HIV positive, if they are passing away as a result of their HIV status, or the virus, I should say, a lot of times they end up.
It's either an opportunistic infection or cancer.
Okay.
But because the treatment has evolved to be so effective, you don't see that much of those kinds of cancers or opportunistic infections anymore.
And I know that they have a thing called PrEP. What is that? I see that on television a lot.
Right. PrEP is pre-exposure prophylaxis. So patients who are at risk mainly through unprotected sex are offered PrEP.
Okay.
To take once a day. And it decreases their risk of being infected.
Oh, so this is for patients?
This is for an uninfected person.
Uninfected person. Right. So it's prevention?
It's prevention.
Okay.
Now, I have patients who are involved in relationships with people who do have HIV. They don't have it.
Right.
So I offer them PrEP.
Okay. And how effective is that?
It's very effective if they use it.
Okay. We talked a little.
The problem with PrEP, though, is it's only for HIV.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what happened is after people started using PrEP, oh, we don't need condoms. Then they end up getting syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia.
All the other STDs.
And then those are increasing in incidence
Oh,
now.
okay. Wow. Interesting. Let's talk about addictions, sex being one of them. We some of the addictions that you and I have discussed previously, sex addictions, social media addictions, cell phone addictions, and how they really do affect our society. I think the sex addiction is obvious. Or is that really an addiction?
It can be.
Okay.
I have a very interesting song that I play.
Mm-hmm.
When I see patients and they come in, I talk to them, get an idea about what kind of life they have.
Okay.
And specifically with men, some of them engage in promiscuous behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a record that I play for those who are interested. It's called A Ladies' Man by, we call his name.
Okay, we'll
right
figure it
now.
out. Yeah.
It's called A Ladies' Man. I play that for him. And in A Ladies' Man, he discusses being addicted to sexual activity. And then he says that it can stop a person from achieving so much in life because they're so focused on being with a bunch of different women.
And let's talk also, I mean, along the same lines, social media addictions and cell phone addictions. How does one have a social media addiction, and how does that really affect a person? Is that a real thing?
It's real.
Okay.
For instance, I see patients come into the office sometime. I'm talking to them, they're on their cell phones
Wow.
while I'm talking to them.
While you're talking to them about their health.
Yeah, they're on their cell phone.
Wow.
Became interested. I said, there has to be something to this. You walk out on the street, people walking down the street looking at cell phones.
Right.
Crossing the street, looking at cell phones. I said, there's something to
with
this.
their kids. It's crazy.
And I did a little research and come to find out that the cell phones have been developed to get people addicted. One way is through tactile, touch, vision, main ways. Because sometimes people will use a cell phone not because they are looking for any information, it's because of the feel of it.
Wow.
But when the companies developed the cell phones, they took that into consideration.
It's all planned.
It's planned.
I feel like people spend a lot more time focusing on things like their addictions than they do on keeping themselves healthy. Checkups. How often should people get a checkup? A physical exam, annually or twice a year?
They say annually.
Okay.
Usually promote annually, and in doing so, you do certain lab work or any other test that would be appropriate for the complaint the person comes in with.
Okay. Okay. And before we wrap up, how do you feel about the state of the nation, the United States? We have obesity, we have high blood pressure, we have diabetes, we have all these ailments that seem to be rooted in our lifestyle, not necessarily our genetics.
I see patients come to the office, invariably they're overweight, 300 pounds, some 400 pounds. They can't even get on the scale.
Wow.
From overeating, lack of exercise. Big problem, obesity. Big problem. And then in the societies, now it's promoted that don't be worried about how you look.
Right,
you
right.
could be fat and obese.
Right.
And it's fine.
Right.
Don't be concerned about your health.
Yeah.
Just be happy with being obese.
Who you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a problem.
It's
big
disturbing
problem.
because it promotes unhealthy eating and lack of exercise. And it's like, you're
and developing all kinds of comorbidities along
Right.
with obesity, heart disease,
Right.
hypertension, liver disease.
Yeah, all that weight is a stressor on the body.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, listen, we could talk forever. And I'm probably going to have to ask you to come back. And since I come see you once and twice a year in your office, but no, Dr. English, thank you so much for being on the show, man. And any final words you want to say to our audience in terms of health? Words of wisdom.
Be concerned about your health. Very much concerned. Eat properly, not only physical food, mental food. Exercise. Stay away from that television and those cell phones.
Right.
As you and I have said, we had a discussion about television. I got rid of my television 25 years ago.
Yeah, you told me you don't have any TV.
No television.
Yeah.
I study, read.
But you have a huge library.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. I've always said the wise man has a larger, you know where I'm going with this.
I know.
The wise man has a larger bookcase than television. So if you turn your bookcase on its side and it's smaller than your TV, you got a problem.
I use that now myself.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. See you next week, you guys. And don't forget to watch more Sessions Cafe and read. See you next time.
Okay.